Okay guys, so this is going to be History 101 of naming orchids. I promise this isn't going to be boring. I'm going to try to not make it boring. But if history is interesting to you, and especially the history behind naming orchids is interesting to you, then keep watching this video. Okay, so once upon a time, there were a bunch of botany dudes from Europe. Botany, yay! So these botany dudes wanted fame and glory and stuff named after them, so they would go to tropical places in search of tropical plants that would bring them this fame and glory, and they would be able to be named after these said tropical plants. Now you also had botany sponsors. These are the guys with the big bucks. Money symbols there, in case you don't know what a lot of money on a whiteboard looks like. Now, one of these enthusiastic botany sponsors, the guy with the money, was William Catley. Okay, so we have William Catley here, and of course, because he's got the big bags of money, he's got a monocle and a top hat. So William Catley, or as he was known to his home peeps, Will.I.am Catley. If you can't already tell, Cattleya, yes, that is going to be what Cattleyas are named after. So let's do the pronunciation real quick of Cattleyas. Okay, here we go. Cattleya. Cattleya. So William Catley actually received his first orchid in a box with other tropical plants. The orchids were used as packing material to protect the more valuable tropical plants. William Catley decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to keep one of these and see what happens. And he actually bloomed a Cattleya in his greenhouse. Now, the flower's size, fragrance, color inspired many botanists to go after these orchids, as they were now known, and the first one that William Catley said to have bloomed was Cattleya labiata. So you would have the moneybags guys, you would have the hunters, and the sciencey peeps. So those are really your three groups of people that orchids are named after. Now, one particularly famous British botanist known as the father of orchidology is John Lindley. So this father of modern orchidology described almost 2,000 orchid species, and because of that, each carries his name after the botanical name. So, for example, Oncidium cavendishianum is Oncidium cavendishianum Lindley, or also abbreviated as Lindl. This next scene may contain graphic images. Come on, fellows. I'd like to find an orchid today.
But Thomas, we are really tired and we don't like hiking in the Himalayas. Not to mention that the Aborigines will kill us if they find us.
Oh, come now, pish posh, let's find this orchid. Oh my goodness, there it is, fellows, a Phalaenopsis. I shall name it after myself. I will call it Phalaenopsis lobii. For me, Thomas Loeb, and my brother, William Loeb. Yay! Hee-haw! Oh no, fellows, what is that noise? Dun 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 dun. Pew 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 pew. Oh no, fellows, this is the end. And that was the discovery of Phalaenopsis lobii by Thomas Loeb. He ended up losing a leg on that expedition. Not his whole life, like I sort of drew, but based on a true story. Hey guys, so I hope you enjoyed that brief history on orchid naming, And the reason that I sort of did that jump start was to get you guys ready for reading an orchid tag, because I think it's really important to know what those names stand for. Cattleya, Oncidium, and so on and so forth. It's important to know what that actually stands for. It's not just made up, Pig Latin. It is named after somebody who may have risked life or limb to obtain these plants that we grow and enjoy today. Now, it's not so difficult to obtain orchids, but there are still orchids being discovered even today. So Orchidaceae being one of the largest plant families, it could be the largest plant family. I don't think Asteraceae is quite so large. I think it might be a little bit smaller. But anyways, I was getting you guys ready for reading an orchid tag. So when you see Cattleya, you're not just saying, oh, Cattleya, who cares? It's named after William Catley, that cool guy who bloomed a Cattleya in his greenhouse in like 1818 or something, the early 1800s, so forever ago. He was the OG of orchid raising, so props. Okay guys, so these are your basic alliances here. We have Catasetum, Cattleya, Coelogene, Cymbidium, Cypripedium, Dendrobium, Jewel Orchid Alliance, Oncidium, Phalaenopsis, Pleurothallus, and Vanda. So when you see somebody say, oh, this is a Cypripedium, Cypripedium is actually an alliance. So you're going to want to get either the species or genus name in order to figure it out. I know that is kind of confusing because Cypripedium is one of those that's used sort of interchangeably to describe the Paphiopedilums, but Phragmipedium is actually within the Cypripedium alliance. So you're going to want to make sure they're talking about either a Phragmipedium or a Paphiopedilum. Now, this is not the complete list. There are also some like Bulbophyllum and the Biphonaria and Maxillaria. So this is not the complete list of all of the genera, but these are all of the alliances right here. Okay, so here we have our very first orchid tag that we're going to take a look at. Now, this is just an example. I doubt you will find this in common cultivation, especially those as beginner growers. You probably won't choose this as your first orchid, but this is just an example of how looking at an orchid tag can feel overwhelming. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna break it down into bite-sized pieces so that we can understand it. Okay, so let's start with the first part here. We have an abbreviation, SPE. And if you have an abbreviation on one of your orchid tags, it might be worth it to invest in a book that specializes in abbreviations. Of course, abbreviations do change and so do the genera, but it's nice to have just as sort of like a reference guide. So we're going to start with SPE. You can always Google. Google is your friend. So if we Google SPE, that is Speculinia. Now, Speculinia is the genus, and that genus is within the Pleurothallus alliance. So here we have SPE, and if my marker would work, that would be great. So first we have SPE. That is the genus name. And the genus will always, 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 always be capitalized. So here we have a capital S. So we know that this right here is the genus. Next part we have here, the Tribuloides. That is going to be a species. How do I know it's a species? Well, because this first letter here is lowercase. So if you have a lowercase letter here on the second part of your orchid tag, you know that is going to be a species orchid. So each orchid tag has at least two parts, a genus and a species, or a grex. Now, what is a grex, you ask? Okay, so here is our second orchid tag, and this one many of you will be able to recognize. ONC, that's an abbreviation, of course, for Oncidium. And then we have our first grex. This is Sherry Baby, and Sherry and Baby are both capitalized because grexes are capitalized. So a grex is basically just a hybrid. Now, do you look exactly like your sibling? Even identical twins don't always look completely the same. Just like in orchids, you can have an Oncidium Sherry Baby two different Oncidium sherry babies. Maybe they came from the same pod, but they look completely different. So now we need our third piece of the orchid tag. Okay, so now we have the third part to our orchid tag, and this is going to be the cultivar. So if you have an Oncidium sherry baby, check and see if it has a cultivar. Cultivars are given to particularly amazing orchids, orchids that the grower wanted so that he could pass on the genetics. So Oncidium sherry baby Sweet Fragrance was particularly special to somebody. Maybe it was because of the fragrance, maybe it was because it was a high bloomer, maybe because the blooms lasted for so long. It just depends on each particular orchid why they are chosen to pass on their genetics. So if you go to a grower and you say, hey, I want an Oncidium sherry baby, you have to specify the particular cultivar because there are many different cultivars of sherry babies. So just like your siblings, orchids have a lot of brothers and sisters. So you might get a brother that's really ugly, or you might get a brother or sister that's really beautiful. And that in that case, it would be a Oncidium sherry baby Sweet Fragrance. So this third part here is your cultivar. Now, orchid genera do change, and that is because the early botanists of the 18th century that were describing the orchids that they found in the wild, they were classifying them together based on their male and female bits. Today, though, we have something really, really amazing, the world of science, DNA analysis. So now the botanists are grouping together according to a shared common ancestry, and that's known as cladistics. So because of cladistics, we have now totally eliminated the genus Sophronitis and Potinara. Goodbye, I'm sorry. And those have been reclassified into the Cattleya Alliance. Okay, so let's go back to our orchid tags here. No, I didn't actually draw the orchid tags this time, but use your imagination. Okay, so we have our Speculinia, we have a Paphiopedilum, and we have a Cattleya, which was formerly Sophronitis. Now we know that these are all species, and that's because of the lowercase letters of the second part of the orchid tag. So that is our species portion of the tag. Now the species is awesome because it should tell you something about the plant. So it can be flower color, as in the case of Coccinea, which is Latin for red, or Philippense, which is a Paphiopedilum that is located in the Philippines. So the second part of our species orchid tag is going to tell us something about the orchid. So to basically recap here, our genera are going to be capitalized, and typically they're going to be named after people. And our species can also be named after people, but it typically describes something about the plant. So flower color, where it's located, etc., etc. And it is going to be lowercase letters. Now, our genus are also grouped together based on common ancestry using DNA analysis, not the male and female parts anymore. Now, here is where our hybrids come in. So related genera can interbreed to create a new hybrid, and this is where you get your intergeneric hybrids. So you may see it written on a tag as Cattleya bibracea, but typically what happens is they will combine the two genera to form a new hybrid. So in this case, it's going to be Brassocattleya. So here it is, and of course the B in Brasso is capitalized. So Brassocattleya is our new hybrid, and that's typically abbreviated like this. So just A, B, C. Okay, so here is a typical orchid tag you might see. Brassocattleya, Morning Glory. And so we know that this is a hybrid here. So if you go to a grower and you say, hey grower, I want a Brassocattleya Morning Glory. And he's going to ask you, well, Do you want it like this or do you want it like that? What kind of Brassicatlia morning glory do you want? So what do we need after the morning glory? If we want a particular one, say you want the white morning glory with a dark purple lip as opposed to maybe a lighter colored lip. So we're gonna need to add that third part to our tag, the cultivar. Okay, I actually forgot which cultivar it was that had the dark purple lips. So, oh, that's cultivar. Cultivar, okay. So if you say example, cultivar name, insert here, you're gonna get the exact plant that you want with the exact same dark purple lip that first inspired you to get this Brassicatlia morning glory. So it is very important to include a cultivar if you're wanting a particular orchid. Okay, now we're gonna get to one of my favorite parts of orchid tags, and that's gonna be the man-made hybrids. So these are hybrids you would never find in the wild, and therefore they get reclassified into sort of their own genera, and they get this lovely little ARA at the end. So I'm gonna use everybody's favorite orchid here, and that is gonna be the Monierara Millennium Magic cultivar name Witchcraft. So there it is, Monierara. So ARA at the end of our Nothogenus. This is described as a Nothogenus because there ain't no way in hell you're gonna find this in the wild. So Nothogenus, just remember that. Ain't no way, Nothogenus. Now the way that we get these new names here, like Monierara, ARA, the way that we get that is by combining 3 or more genera together. So in the case of Monierara, we have Catasetum, Cycnoches, and Mormodes. So all of these guys put together equals Monierara. Another common one that you might see is Alicera. So here we have the ARA being represented there. And of course, when we see that ARA, we know that it is an intergeneric hybrid of at least 3 genera. So we have our Brassia, our Miltonia, and our Oncidium. Put it all together and you get the Alicera. So for these new genera that have the new name attached at the end, you can also have a genera. For example, we have here EPLC, so that stands for Epilelacatlia. So when we break that down, we know that it contains at least 3 different genera. So you're asking yourself, well, why doesn't it end in ARA? Well, when you have at least 3, it can end in ARA or it might not end in ARA. But when you have a genus that has 4 or more, so if you have an intergeneric hybrid combining 4 or more genera, it is always given a new genus name that ends in the ARA. So less than 4, it could end in ARA. More than 3, 4. Hope I'm explaining this. I'm doing the best I can. If it has 4, it's gonna have the ARA. I guess that's what I'm trying to say here. So in the case of the Volkertera, it is gonna be Browtonia, Cattleya, Guarianthe, and Rhyncholalia. So those are all of the 4 that contain this new genus name. Or as we mentioned before, it is also known as a Nothogenus because there ain't no way that it is going to be created in the wild. So anytime you see ARA at the end of a genus name, as in Volkertera, you know that it's going to be a hybrid of at least 3, maybe more than that, genera. Okay, let's test what we've learned here. We are going to see some species or hybrid names on the board. I'll give you guys a few seconds, and you have to either say whether it is a species or a hybrid. Alrighty guys, here we have Cattleya dowiana. Is it a species or a hybrid? Boop, 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 boop. If you said species, you are correct, sir. And again, we know it is a species because of the lowercase d. All right, next one. This one may be a little tricky because it has a cultivar name, so I'll give you guys a few seconds. Beep, 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 beep. If you said species, you are correct. And the reason it's a species, remember guys, because here we have a lowercase letter. Just because it has a cultivar name does not mean that it is a hybrid. Particular cultivars that are beautiful and magnificent can also have cultivars. Okay, last one here, guys. I just wanted to test your knowledge. Is this a intergeneric hybrid with at least 3 genera? And is it a hybrid or a species? I'll give you a few seconds. Beep, 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 beep. Yes, it is a intergeneric hybrid with at least 3, and we know that because of the ARA, and we know that it is a hybrid because of the capitalized Grex here, so clownish, and then we have our cultivar, which is cotton candy. Put it all together, you get Alicera clownish cotton candy. Alrighty guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I'm sure there's something that I'm leaving out, but if you have any questions, you can always comment in the comment section down below and I will answer. Subscribe to this channel for more videos like this one in the future. And if you want to learn some edumacation, you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter as well. That's where I post blooming pictures of my orchids before I make a video about them. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys later.